Down in the Dugout, powered by Scout Scoops.
Edition of Down in the Dugout, the show that covers everything baseball and so much more. Tonight we are lucky to have Logan, our Nutsy Poo. Most of you who follow us know that he's been with us quite a bit, but we're blessed to have him back again tonight. And we're also extremely lucky tonight to have, for her fans on Twitter, you'll know her as Infield Fly Girl, Alyson. Welcome. Thank you very much, both of you guys, for joining us.
No problem.
Welcome, guys.
To be here.
All right, great. And then, as always, my co-host, Scott, and Chris Owisha, in-house White Sox fan, but we still let him join, so it's all right. All right, so we
always have to go there.
Always. There will never be a show where I don't ram you for being a White Sox fan, ever. All right. So, but so we just watched. Well, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you.
But no.
I just want to congratulate all you Bears fans from Chicago on the big quarterback signing this week. I think it was, great move. Really excited for you guys. And, I think the Red Rifle will be much better than Russell Wilson would have been anyway. So congratulations.
Or Deshaun Watson.
I'm just waiting for the Bears to sign a starting quarterback because they still don't have any quarterback on the roster as far as I'm concerned. So
did they let Mitch go today? Is something happen with Mitch?
Yeah, he's going to win a ring. He's going to win a ring with the Bills, which will be just icing on top of the cake as a backup.
Yeah, I saw something like that.
Your words are hurtful. Do you know that? They're hurtful. I've got a lot of feelings, and you hurt all of them. And the Bears already do that to me.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Of course.
Yeah, and the Cubs did that for 30 years. So you know what? Say what you want. I don't care.
I don't know what I'm going to do on Sundays in October, November, and December. I mean, this will be like the first year in forever that I pretty much am free all day. I'm sure it's not going to be wasting time on that.
Don't count out the Red Rifle. Don't count out the. He's a good quarterback. He's got a good arm. He's had some success, so you never know.
Now, Alyson, you're a Cubs fan. Are you a Bears fan also? Are you a football fan?
I am agnostic in all things American hand egg. Mr. IFG is a lifelong Bears fan, so okay. I personally was really, really hoping for Russell Wilson because I want Bears fans to be happy, because if Bears fans are happy, I hear a lot less about how Bears are not good.
Oh, well, thank you for that. It's secondary support, but we take it. We embrace that secondary support. So I was kind of hoping for Russell, too. I've got a really good friend who's good friends with him.
I offered space in my U-Haul. Coming from the Pacific Northwest to Chicago anyway, it would have been so convenient. I would have just picked him up on the way.
So I was hoping, but, it's okay. I'm glad for Mitch. He signed with the Bills, obviously, 1-year deal. I think Mitch is going to make a hell of a backup. I really do. You talking about a gentleman who can come in, manage the game, is mobile. He's got the arm to go deep. The accuracy is always going to be an issue with Mitch because his inconsistency in the pocket. But he's going to make a really nice backup to Allen there in Chicago. If Allen goes down for a quarter or two, you bring in Mitch Trubisky, you're really not going to miss a beat that any fan is going to notice. So
I'm not even sure if he ends up as the backup, to be honest, because you have to remember they also have Jake Fromm, and he was no slouch in college as well. So,
are you saying that Jake Fromm is better than Mitch? Come on, let's be real here. Let's just be real.
I would like to.
I'm leaving. I'm done. Do you guys have a good night? All right. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Mitch is a great guy, but of course we don't know what his true skill is because he has never had a professional NFL coach him.
It's a good point.
So, but yeah, I think you would definitely notice if Josh Allen went down and Trubisky came into the game. I mean, no offense to Mitch, but there's a pretty big separation there in terms of ability. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, I just meant for a quarter or two. You could put Mitch in there and. The offense could still move, and not just unlike the Bears' offense. Their offense could still move, and yeah. So, anyways, whoever brought that up, thank you.
Is there a chance that Foles could start, Bob?
Well, you want to know my truth? Here's what's really going to happen, and no one's saying it. They're going to end up trading Foles. Dalton is going to hang on there. They're going to end up drafting Mac Jones coming out of Alabama with their first pick. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, Foles is going to end up back with the Eagles this year. You want to bet on that? Like,
Well, there's rumors talking about trading him back to Jacksonville, which I found interesting. But anyways, I digress.
I love how a baseball podcast has been.
Yeah, it's
nothing about football.
Yeah,
For the last 5
The
minutes.
NFL
that was all my
everything.
fault. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
want to talk about baseball on the
off.
stream, and he brings it up. That's all right.
I just wanted to congratulate you. That's
Yeah,
all.
well, thank you. I appreciate
Still a
it.
fresh wound.
Yeah. So, anyways, let's talk about this stream real quick, and then what we're going to do is I want to kick it over to Alyson because, as many of you know, we talk about growing the game here on this show. We talk about it ad nauseum. Really, we do, and how to do that. And I find it very interesting. I think all of our listeners are going to find her perspective about growing the game very interesting, also, and very true. So what we're going to do, though, is I do, obviously, Sony just went ahead and released their newest trailer for MLB The Show 21. This one was designated towards new fielding, a couple new options as far as catchers go. So some interesting stuff. It wasn't real long, but then again, I think we talked about it last show. We did not think it was going to last that long, and it didn't, but they still snuck in, what'd you say, Chris, about 30 minutes of it?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be what you can kind of expect from all of these. Last week was about 30 minutes. This week was about 30 minutes. Kind of seems like that's going to be what it is.
Right. So let's just go around the room real quick. Chris, tell me what you thought. What did you see in there that excited you? What didn't excite you? Is there enough to be excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I wasn't really looking forward to the stream that much out of all the different streams they have planned. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some interesting stuff in it. I mean, the different fielding. I mean, they added more fielding animations. They definitely made some improvements to what plagued a lot of people last year. It looks like it's going to be a lot more fluid. I liked the off Z access catches that they had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be a nice addition, just in terms of making it look more realistic and giving you more options of the guy catching the ball, where the ball isn't just going to magically appear in somebody's glove. But I think the catching thing that they had mentioned too with the pop times kind of caught my attention, because I almost wonder if they're adding attribute ratings to catchers, because they mentioned that it's going to be programmed into the catchers. So does that mean every catcher in the game, including all the minor league guys, are going to have this too, or is it just the pros and it's going to be behind something that we don't necessarily interact with?
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that works, because it sounds brand new. I just wonder how it's going to be implemented exactly, and if you're going to be able to actually adjust that on some of these catchers.
Right. Logan, what about you?
I'm actually super, super excited. This was I know you said you weren't super excited about today's stream, but I was, because I think fielding was the worst part about MLB The Show 20. Like, after the first patch that Sony San Diego put out last year, it broke fielding for like a full month. I stopped playing MLB The Show for a full month in like April, right after the game came out. And it frustrated me to no end. It still frustrates me to this day, all of the fielding bugs and the things that don't work correctly. So it looks like the changes that they made seem to have really went to helping some of those, especially the bloop hits, being able to combat those a little bit better, and the catches at the wall. But yeah, those off Z axis catches and throws look fantastic, because I guess one of the issues I've had up to this point is fielding has no urgency. And when you're playing online, you will give up runs because it takes forever for your outfielder to get the ball back into the infield. So seeing them kind of like round their trajectory to the balls to come in to be able to make a throw quick is going to make a big time difference moving forward. The other thing that I noticed on the stream is that they are making a lot of changes to make the game very accessible, which makes sense going over to Xbox. There's going to be a lot of people that are coming into the game for the first time. So it seems like a lot of the changes they are making are to make the game more streamlined and easier to get a hold of for new players.
I would agree with that. I think that's a good approach, especially with the baseball simulation such as this title. A lot of times the minutia of the sport can really inundate a newcomer, whether it be from any walk of life. If the first time you've ever picked up a game is MLB The Show 20, you're going to struggle with that. It's going to take you a while. So I agree with that, Logan. Scotty, what about you, buddy?
Well, I didn't get to see the entire stream. I actually was running a little bit late here, so
sure.
I know. Unfortunately, that day job kills me sometimes. But yeah, what I did see looked great. I was really impressed with the fluid animations that I saw, and I did hear that they said they added a lot of animations to the fielding. I saw a bunch of stuff for the tagging up and the tag indicator. So that's kind of exciting because I know there were some issues with that last year. So I'm definitely excited about that. The Z-axis that you guys were talking about before, that sounds like it could be a great addition. So yeah, overall, I mean, obviously the fielding was a big issue last year for a lot of players, especially online players. So I think addressing that is a big thing. And I do agree with the whole accessibility thing. I think that just because, you go into Xbox, you're going to a whole new group of players. And I think, you want to definitely make it a little bit easier for some of them to pick up and play. And I think a lot of that stuff will be able to, be added in if you want to do the casual mode or the competitive mode or the simulation mode. I think you'll be able to pick and choose probably, which way you want to play. There's, probably going to be a ton of options in there. So yeah, overall, I mean, I think it's great because, the more options, the better for all of us, right?
Right. Absolutely.
We're obviously doing this podcast live today. So we have a chat from Twitch, and I saw someone point out, and I recognized it during the stream, but it didn't say PS4 gameplay captured on PS5. Right. It said next gen gameplay captured.
Yep.
So today was the first real look we had on fielding next gen, but kind of next gen gameplay, really. And it did look really, really smooth, like incredibly smooth.
Yep, I would agree. Absolutely. It reminded me, and you guys know I'm a big fan of this series, and that's Pro Spirits Baseball. I imported that one last year. Scott, I think you have that one too, don't you?
Oh yeah, I love that game. That's
love
fantastic.
That game. They really, and this is no knock on Sony or anything, because Sony does a wonderful job of bringing the world of baseball to the masses. But I think Pro Spirits Baseball, it's just a different type of baseball, and there's a lot of little nuances to the game that we don't necessarily see over here. And that game does a wonderful job of capturing those nuances. Segue. That brings us to our other guest this evening, Alyson. Now, Alyson, we were talking a little bit earlier, and you were talking about when you first kind of had your first love for the game of baseball, right? And when was that?
Absolutely. I will absolutely trace my it all goes back to 1998, the summer of 98. I'm absolutely a Sammy Sosa bandwagoner. I was 12 years old and in between 7th and 8th grade, and had a full summer of WGN sitting on the floor in front of the TV like a 5-year-old watching Sammy hit bombs out of Wrigley Field, and been hooked ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all remember that year. Even non-baseball fans were caught up in that race between Sammy and Mark, and that was just such a fun summer. And that's when the long ball really became prevalent. And we talked about it last show. We're hoping to see small ball come back a little bit and a little less away from reliance upon just a long ball. But now, Alyson, once again, we talked, and you were talking about, obviously you follow Major League Baseball, but your newfound love falls in a different area. And where would that be?
That's in Taiwan. That's the Cpbl. It's the Chinese Professional Baseball League in Taiwan. And it's a wonderful league. It's got 5 teams, and they are just so much fun. It's fun baseball that it's totally different to the MLB product. There's cheerleaders and crazy mascots that break dance, and the crowds are loud, and it's just a whole different environment. And it's really, really fun to be a part of.
Yeah. So if you could explain to some of our listeners who've never watched this brand of baseball before, we just talked about minutia, nuances, all of that. what are some of the subtle, and I think you even said it, not so subtle differences between the two leagues?
Let me see. If a lot of people like to ask me what the level of play is in the CPBL, because, everybody's used to talking about the minor leagues or used to, rookie level A ball, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like that's not an adequate comparison. It's a different product entirely. I would say the CPBL play, closer to what you would possibly have seen in like the mid 80s. You've got a lot of small ball. You've got these fast dudes who like to steal bases, and maybe they're not the best at it, but darn it, they try. And the defense is a little dodgy at times. But yeah, you've got your power hitters who are going to hit home runs anyway, because big dudes who hit home runs are going to do that no matter what. But you've also got the lot of slap singles all over the field and all that fun stuff. So if you're like bored with the MLB product where you have this whole 3 true outcomes and that's all you ever see, I highly recommend looking at different leagues around the world. The CPBL is great for that small ball stuff. You get that in the KBO and the MPB as well. I can't say enough for these leagues. It's fun and it's real baseball, and it's a blast. It's just a blast.
I would agree. I've watched my fair share, and it's, like I said, we've talked about, it's different baseball, but it's baseball. At its heart, at its core, it's baseball. And there's a lot of respect for watching those games. You're right. It is a lot of fun. We just talked about it, and I mentioned it again, growing the game. And we like to think of it when we're growing the game inside the box. We look at growing the game in the States. You have a different perspective on that, though. You like to look at growing the game from outside the box and internationally. Could you speak a little bit about that?
I would love to see MLB sort of relax a little bit on its adherence to these very, very firm traditions where everything is a little bit too stuffy and a little bit too serious. And I'm very much here for the religion of baseball, and we all, have our legendary characters that we're going to tell the stories about forever. But there is a whole world out there that also enjoys this game and loves this game. And yet we call ourselves the World Series, and we're the only country that plays it. And I'm not really sure just having a city in Toronto is quite enough. We could be appealing all over the world. And we could be incorporating some of these really cool things that are already being done elsewhere and drawing in new fans here in the States, because there are whole generations of kids who maybe don't have the sentimental attachment to some of the past players that we all hang on to who have been here for 20 years or more. So if we want them to love the sport as much as we do, maybe we bring in some things that are fun for them, get the K-pop kids involved. We'll bring in some cheerleaders. Let's get a water gun fight or something. The CTBC brothers had a water gun weekend this summer. It was a blast. Everybody had water guns. They were shooting each other. There was like one girl who sat in the wrong section for her team, and they annihilated her. It was hilarious. Yeah. And these are like things that like we could be doing, and it would be so fun. Right. It would be so fun. And it's like, you don't have to you don't have to add a pitch clock, or you don't have to, I don't know, do all these different things to adjust pace of play to keep people interested in baseball. You could just make it fun. Right. And then people will want to be part of it because it's fun.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that, Alyson. We had Blair Henry with us last show, and he is a scout for the Boston Red Sox. And we talked about how the average age of a Major League Baseball fan right now is, 55? Is that what he said? I think that's correct. And how he wants to start growing the game also and getting more kids involved. That's why he was a big fan of MLB The Show and making it accessible so kids can start understanding the game at a basic level and showing that it can be fun. Now, but his was within the game. You're talking about with outside of the field. having fun, engagement within the fans, within the stands, giving kids a reason to get excited about going to a ball game the same way they would be about going to a park or to a movie or to a friend's house.
Absolutely. It's, again, one of the teams in the CPBL. In the 5th and 6th inning of every game, the cheerleaders take a break and they invite all the kids from the crowd to come up and do the cheer dances instead. There are kids who look forward to going to baseball because they get to do the cheerleader dance on the stage.
Right.
And they get started doing that. And, 10 years later, they're going there because they have this infatuation with the team. I always say baseball's a long-term relationship that you build with a team over time. Nobody's going to baseball to watch one game and never go back. It's, you build that connection with your team over time. So, start it young with little fun things, and 20 years from then, maybe they're bringing their own kids.
Right. That's an awesome point, actually, because you're right. It's not a one and done scenario with baseball. I think we all have. Chris, what's your first memory of a baseball game?
I am not entirely sure when I saw my first baseball game because I've been to so many of them, but I do know it involved Frank Thomas and Maglio Ordonez.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with Frank Thomas as a kid. I thought the guy was everything to me. And then, my dad was a White Sox fan and he saw the 59 Sox play as a kid. So, I knew about all the, his favorite players too. And then, he would show me the differences of how much the game has changed and stuff. But I just remember sitting behind home plate sometime in the 90s, Frank Thomas coming up the plate, just hoping to see him hit a home run because it's that's pretty much what he did in my eyes, every at bat. So, but yeah, it's changed a lot since. I would say just Sox games in general have done a good job kind of changing a little bit of that. They do have good involvement with fans, but it's nothing. The game today is nothing like what you see overseas. You hear players if they go to the Dominican or they watch one of those games, and you see the broadcasts that were going on with the Korean leagues. Just the fan interaction level where they're screaming and cheering and they're shouting in the horns, and that does not exist over here. People are it's more relaxed, which is nice at times, but yeah, you definitely don't see the interaction that you see over there.
Yeah. Logan, what about you? What's your first memory?
The first game that I ever went to was in 2001. I actually believe it was actually Sammy Sosa playing in PNC Park. It was a Pirate Cup game, watching Sammy Sosa in those early 2000s, just great Pirate teams. Just, how low could you cut the payroll Pirate teams? But
aren't they still?
I was going to say, I know 20 years later, here we are.
Okay. Yeah. But honestly, my love of baseball comes from baseball video games because I grew up in Las Vegas and then we moved to Montana when I was probably 12 or 13. So, when I was living in Vegas, we were 4.5 hours away from the nearest pro baseball team, and living in Montana, I was 8 hours away from the next closest pro baseball team. So I developed my love of baseball by playing with Jason Bay and the early, MLB The Show games or MVP baseball. That was always how I got my connection to baseball, was through video games. And I think it's one of the biggest things, or the biggest bright spots about MLB The Show coming to Xbox this year, is all it does is it exposes baseball to a new group of people that maybe didn't ever get baseball exposed to them, which there's going to be kids out there like me who don't live close to a professional baseball team. Baseball isn't on TV all the time in a lot of different markets, and this is going to be a great opportunity for them to jump in and play it like they would Madden or NBA 2K.
Well, so you bring up an excellent point there, Logan, and that's why every year I yell at Konami to bring these different baseball, or at least pro spirits, to the U.S. Because right now the only option for people in the U.S. to play this game as to import it. I'll be honest, when I imported that game last year, it's not cheap. It was like 120, 130 bucks, something like that. And so that really cuts out a large part of people who are, listen, we can't have a myopic view. There's more than one way to grow this game. It's a beautiful game. It's a wonderful game, and it's exciting. But we have to have different vantage points of how to grow it. Alyson just brought up one. Logan, you just brought up one. I mean, there's multiple branches of how to grow this game. Last year, I took my kids to a Cubs Pirates game, and we paid. Well, I won't say what we paid for seats behind home plate, but my brother and I. It was a 4-hour game, and we spent half the time. My kids are 10 and 7. They have a basic understanding of baseball, but we spent time looking at stuff in the skies, looking at buildings, looking at planes to entertain them, because the crowd was just the crowd. And I think that plays back to what Alyson was stating, that we don't do enough. You buy your ticket, you go in, you sit down, and you watch the game, you get up and leave. And that's all there is. And we all remember when we were 6, 7, 8. Scott, you probably don't. But yeah, we remember to hold our attention for 3-4 hours with anything was almost impossible. Scotty, what about you, buddy? Yeah, exactly. Scotty, what about you? What's your first impression?
My first memory,
memory.
With baseball, God, I'm going to date myself with this, but
John Crow.
I wish it was John Crow.
Pete Rose with the Expos. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're talking, early 80s. You're talking early 80s. Living in Pennsylvania, obviously, Phillies were a very good team, during that time period. And they were always on. I just remember, watching them, and, Mike Schmidt, Steve Carlton, that whole era of great Philly teams. And, I remember the games. I remember the 80s teams, the division series with, when they're playing the Astros, and you got Mike Scott, and, there's just so many great players. And,
right.
Just remembering like Mike Scott with that splitter he had, and just that kind of stuff, just little things like that. Going to games, at Old Veteran Stadium. I remember going to Phillies and Dodgers and seeing Fernando Valenzuela and Steve Carlton pitch, and to me it was like the greatest thing ever. Because Fernando was, it was Fernando mania, so everybody was, just loving, everything he did. And growing up in that era, I think is, that's obviously one of the great eras of baseball. And, then being able to really, enjoy it and know more about the game into the 90s. And the 90s obviously were great. You had McGuire and Sosa and all that kind of stuff. So just being so into baseball around that home run chase when that was going on. And kind of like Logan as well. Like, if you think back, all the old baseball games that we used to play, Bob, like I hate, you're a few years older than me. So, you would know these, some of the games, like you had hardball, and you had the old, just Tony La Russa baseball.
Sorry, my God.
No, you're fine.
Tony La Russa baseball, and all those games that were just so, you get the new version every year, and there was just so many little things, and you thought it was the greatest thing. And if you stack those up to what we play now and what we actually play with now, it's like, wow, boy, we don't really look, know how good we have it with some of the stuff we have,
I agree.
It's unbelievable. Some of the stuff that we're playing now, if I knew back then, we'd be playing, I'd be like, I'd be in heaven, but I think just growing up in a culture of, just going to games, watching games, playing base. We grew up in a time when we weren't on the internet when we were out of school. We were home from school in the summer. We were outside playing baseball. We were out in the fields playing ball all day. I'd leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning with a group of friends. We'd go down, we'd play baseball all day.
Right.
And then we'd come back when it got dark. It'd be like dusk, and all of a sudden we'd be home, and we'd be looking for something to eat, and then we'd go to sleep, and we'd get up and do it all over the next day. We weren't home playing, video games that much, or playing, on the internet or on Twitter or whatever the kids do these
No,
days.
you're
But
figuring out how to ride your bike with no hands, so you can carry the bats in one hand and the gloves in the other.
if it wasn't hardball, we were playing wiffle ball, or we were playing kickball, we were playing some form of baseball, and and obviously baseball card collecting. That was like the really hot era. Those mid '80s, early '90s. Baseball cards, really started to take off, and then you had all the big rookie cards, and you had Canseco and McGuire, and just a great era, and there's just so many memories. I mean, I just, when I look back at my childhood and growing up, and even through my 20s, I just see there's just so many references of baseball. Even when, when me and my wife had my first son, we took him as a baby to Veteran Stadium. It was one of the first places we took him when he was, able to finally get up and go. We dressed him in a little Phillies outfit and took him to a Phillies game. And, we even have pictures of him with like Scott Rowland and some of those old time Philly, they look old time now, but they're not really old time. But yeah, there's I think the thing about baseball is it's so great because you can use it to reference your entire life. If you really think back, like you think about your teens, and you have all these references to baseball in your teens, and you have it in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, and like when Bob's in his 60s, so Bob has references all through his 50s and 60s.
I know you.
I know you're not. I think I'm actually older than Bob, but
you are.
So,
you are. Yeah.
Stop.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
But you have like all through your life, you have all these reference points, and a lot of them go back to baseball when you're really a big baseball fan.
I actually got a funny story about that. When I was in college looking for where I was going, I had a meeting set up with the administration's person, and it just so happened to be the same day that Mark Burley was throwing his perfect game, and it was on the radio. And I was with my parents because going up to school for the first time, and we were in the car, and it was like the 8th inning, and I looked at my mom and my dad, and I go, I'm not getting out of the car. And they're like, well, we have to meet with this person. We have like 10 minutes. I'm like, we can sit here for 10 minutes. And it gets closer, and it gets closer. And Dwayne Wise makes that crazy catch. And I'm not leaving until he throws. I can't. It's bad luck now. And my dad looks at my mom, and he's like, he's right. We can't leave the car. So I ended up being 35 minutes late to my administration's meeting. And thankfully it was like near the end of the day. So like, it wasn't that big of a deal, but she's looking at me like, this is a great first impression. and she's like, oh, I was so sorry, but Mark Burley just threw a perfect game. And it's a school in Illinois too, so it's not like we were like in some out of state where like nobody would care that it was a White Sox.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, the White Sox, Burley pitches for the White Sox, and the person looks at me dead serious. I'm like, I'm a Cubs fan. And I'm like, I'm screwed. I'm just screwed. But I totally remember, like,
The question is, do you really want to work for somebody that doesn't understand?
Yeah. Yeah. Do I really want to go to school?
I mean, that's a religious experience, being present for a perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's like Scott said, you really do. I totally have dates I attribute to happy ones and sad ones of like what happened during the baseball season. I just remember stupid stuff like that where that's one of them. Going to, I went, the school I ended up graduating from. I have a funny first story of the first time I was there. So, but yeah, it's kind of crazy how that works out.
Well, Alyson, you had talked about it. You brought up really the 98 season, just grabbing you emotionally, but you also talked about off camera a little bit about one of the big reasons, not only because of what Mark and Sammy was doing at the ballpark, but you attended that with someone, most of those games, and you watched most of those games with who?
Most of the time, I was watching with my grandfather.
Okay.
My pop was my mother's father.
Okay.
And he sort of had we had a running thing going on. He picked Mark, I picked Sammy. We spent that whole summer working, like watching together. And, you know, when I wasn't out playing with the kids, we had 20, that was the best summer ever. I swear that I was so blessed. My 12-year-old summer, we had 22 kids that lived up the street from me. So we were just constantly at each other's houses and always in each other's places. And my pop had a big field, like a big 5-acre field that was just blank and empty and had one tree on it. So that one tree designated the first baseline. We mowed down the whole field and we spent that whole summer playing baseball. So we would go and play ball and we'd go and watch the games, and it was such a blast. So yeah, that's my big, like, my big Sandlot summer.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you know, the first game I ever went to was '83. It was the Cubs versus the Astros at Wrigley. And while I have fond memories of that, obviously, it was because my first, 84 was my first real game that had emotional attachment. It was the Mets versus the Cubs, Sutcliffe versus Gooden on the mound, which was an amazing, amazing matchup to see take place. But my father had gone with us. My father was blind and could not see. So we could only get standing room only tickets. And if you've ever been to Wrigley, you know that there's these ramps that walk up to the broadcast booth. And so we sat on those ramps to watch the games. Great vantage point, by the way. But he couldn't see the game, so I spent the whole game. He could hear, and so what he couldn't understand audibly, I would explain to him what was going on visually, and tell him what was happening on the field. And yeah, I mean, as someone I look back. Here I am now in my 40s, not 60s. Thank you. In my 40s, and I still remember that day, and I can still almost feel my father sitting next to me. On the ramp.
I mean, that's a great moment, and honest to goodness, like, that's one of the great things about baseball. Honestly, I don't know if any sport, like, I love football. I love it so much. I literally spend all day, Saturdays and Sundays, watching football. But I don't know if there's any sport that can give you the same emotional, visceral reaction as baseball does.
Right.
Like, there's no other sport that connects emotionally to people than baseball does. It's a weird phenomenon.
It is
that baseball, like,
and holds you for 162 games a year and makes you sad every time you don't get more than that.
Yeah, it's unreal. And honest to God, there's nothing there. And I've been to virtually every professional sport that is played in America at this point, and there's no feeling like walking into a professional baseball stadium.
Right.
Nothing touches it. Like,
right.
Not walking into an NFL stadium, not walking into an NBA arena, nothing. Professional baseball stadium, there's an aura of magic around parks, and you feel it as soon as you step inside.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that this continues, right. So that it's not all eaten up by the hunger for ad revenue.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we're taking care of our players so that the best talent will want to keep playing baseball instead of going to other sports. We need to draw in the kids so that they become kids who like baseball, so they become adults who love baseball. And I really love some of the things that, like, the WBSC, the World Baseball Softball Confederation, is doing to make baseball more accessible to a wider number of communities and people in different places by incorporating women's baseball and softball and men's softball and baseball 5, which I don't know if you've ever heard of baseball 5, but it is the coolest thing. And they've just approved e-baseball as an actual competitive sport that they're going to push toward Olympics qualification.
And so, what is? Oh, go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'd like you to explain a little bit more about Baseball 5, if you could.
Absolutely. So Baseball 5 is really cool. So if you've ever lived somewhere that doesn't have a whole lot of space, like I used to live in New York City, and there was one place where I lived where like we didn't have a whole lot of room to play in, but there was like a courtyard parking lot thing, right? And it's not quite big enough for baseball, and if you hit something, it's going to go over a fence or into a window. Not the best environment for baseball. If I had known about Baseball 5, that would have been the perfect place for that game. You stand in one corner, you have 5 players. So this is a good game if you don't have 22 kids living up the street to field an entire team or two. You get 5 people. And you've got your fourth, you have a guy in the middle, like where the pitcher would stand, and then somebody that stands on where each base would be. You don't really have an outfield because you don't need one. And the hitter kind of takes just like a handball or a tennis ball or whatever. That's kind of like what the ball is. And you swack it. And then you run. And you try not to get tagged out. That's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
It's like, you have your fielders and you have your 4 bases and you can hit a home run and all of this stuff. But it only takes 5 people and a tennis ball instead of a whole ton of equipment.
Right.
And so it's a way to keep the heart of baseball, something that's playable and accessible, if you don't have the privilege of space and equipment and people.
Which many don't. And that's one of the big people talk about sports like that. Scott, you brought it up, but when we were kids, it was nothing to go out and find 6-on-6, 7-on-7. We all had bats and gloves. And let me tell you, I didn't grow up with a ton of money, and we still found ways to do it. But
yeah, no, and I think that's one of the things that even, that we've been trying to do. I mean, the person in the baseball and the MLB, the show community and the, the social media community that I think does a tremendous job with this whole grow game and kind of pushing the younger generation is M. Frisk. And he does a lot of his blitzball stuff, which is kind of like a newer wiffle ball, I guess. It's basically a form of wiffle ball type stuff, and he just does a lot of things that I think really reaches out to the younger generation, which is really what we need right now. We just recently did a video a couple weeks ago, or actually last weekend, where we filmed a bunch of guys using different bats and stuff like that, where kind of similar to the Victus video that he put out a few weeks ago. And, it was just being on that baseball field with some of these guys. And, we had some minor league players from the Cardinals with us, and they were young guys, 18-year-olds and just young baseball players. We had some high school kids that were, real good prospects, potential, maybe draft prospects at some point. It was just, just being on that baseball field with the young players and, the sound of the bat. It's just, you can't recreate that in any real environment. It just happens, and you don't see that stuff these days as much. It's we see baseball on TV and it's like, it's all about, commercial breaks and all this other kind of stuff. And I just think that we kind of need to somehow connect the dots there. I mean, I don't know how to do it. I mean, if I did, I probably wouldn't have to have a day job, but but I think there has to be a way to basically connect the dots with the generations and bring that whole connection of how it feels to actually be at a game, play a game, to the people today who don't really have an interest in baseball, or maybe have a small interest, but just need something to kind of push them towards baseball. Because there's this whole group of kids that are out there that, are just playing video games. They don't leave the house. They don't ride their bikes. They don't do any of the stuff that we did as kids, and I think that, for them, being able to get on a baseball field and being able to just get that feeling that, like you guys said, you can only get that with baseball. You don't get it playing other sports. I mean, I've played other sports. I'm sure you guys have played other sports, and each, not saying one sport's better than the other, but baseball is different. It just has that different vibe, that different feeling, and I think that we have to find a way to connect generations with baseball, and there's got to be a way to do that. I think that that's something that MLB is trying to do with the whole Ken Griffey approach this year, where they brought on Griffey to kind of connect to, some of the younger generations, I think.
Mhm.
And I think that that's definitely a way that they have to, approach getting some of these younger people into the game. Because, like we said before, I mean, Blair Henry said the other day, 55 is the average age of a baseball fan, so.
I
That's
think
just not sustainable.
it would help if they got rid of blackouts too.
Yeah,
The way-
blackouts need to go. Absolutely. Blackouts need to go.
I mean, the fact
There
that
needs to be more individualism, like
Yeah.
like the NBA kind of loosens stuff up with the shoes and letting the players wear the different not the cleats, but the different sneakers. And I think MLB needs to do stuff like that. They need to let the players be players, let them have fun, let them be individual. Who doesn't love the Tatis, home run swing and bat slam? I mean, that's what they need.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think people are like, some of the purists are like, oh, it's not part. But if you look back, it is. I mean, look at some of the videos from, the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and you look at some of those players. Those guys all had personality.
Yep.
I mean, look at Pete Rose. I mean,
Yeah.
if Pete Rose played today, they'd want to throw him out every game. You know what I mean? Because of the way, seriously, he'd get tossed out every game. So. I think we need to have, more personality with the players. And I think some of the players like Tatis are great examples of what the future of baseball, can be. Being a Phillies fan, obviously, we have Bryce Harper, and I know a lot of people, there's always this love-hate with Bryce Harper. And I was the same thing before he came to the Phillies, but like him or hate him, he has personality, and he brings that to the field every day. And I mean, I was listening to something the other day and they're like, yeah, Harper is like 270, 35 home runs, 100 RBIs. And, that's a great season, so.
That's what Reggie Jackson did.
Yeah. So, it's, and again, I mean, he might not be the, 345 or 50 home run, 150 or 140 RBI guy that some had predicted he would be, but he's still a pretty good baseball player and he has personality, and, he's one of those players that people in Philadelphia just love because of how he connects to the fans, and I think we need more of those players. We need more of that, and I think MLB
it definitely does it does need to be. We need to get to a point as longtime baseball fans where we're okay with new baseball fans being fans in their own way.
Right.
Sure.
If people are coming in and they are straight up back of the jersey fans, they don't care what color he's wearing, they are here for Fernando Tatis Jr. That's awesome to me. If we're at a point now where clearly ownership doesn't care about signing these ridiculous long-term contracts and really tying down a player no matter how much a franchise loves them. Chicago Cubs, I'm looking at you. So, we watch these players get drafted and they come up through the minors and they debut and we fall in love. And then as the second that they're available, they get traded to some other team. Are we supposed to forget about that investment in time?
Life as a Pirate fan.
That's
my whole life as a
nutsy.
Pirate fan. It's been my life as a Pirate fan for the last.
Enjoy Cabrian for a few years.
I am fully convinced that no one hates baseball more than Major League Baseball hates baseball.
Absolutely. And and I'll tell you right now, I'm a Cubs fan because when I was looking for baseball, the Cubs were there for me. They were on WGN and they were there for me. And I can't say that for the Cubs now. They're not even here for 60% of Chicago.
Right.
And they actively go out of their way to prevent people from watching the game. So, it's okay if, your favorite player gets released and then they get signed in Japan and now you're going to go and watch that team for a while because you're invested in that player. And that's really cool. And that needs to be okay too. I think a lot of the gatekeeping fandom should seriously tone down if what our goal is taking the sport that we love into a future that is considerably different than what it's coming down from.
Right. Yep. I would
just out of curiosity, what do all of you guys think? We're having this conversation about baseball, what MLB can do, and what we can do as fans, or what we can do to connect I guess, to real life baseball. What about baseball video games? What role do they play in this? What do you guys think about that? Do you think that they play a role? I mean, obviously we talked about, going to Xbox is going to bring in a whole new generation of players and stuff like that. Nuts you talked about before. But what else? Is there anything else that, a baseball video game could do to help bring in, more people? I mean, obviously MLB The Show added the casual mode. I think that's going to be a big, that's a nice, addition this year. I think that'll be big for a lot of players getting into it. But is there anything else that you guys can think of with that, or?
Well, like one of the biggest things that baseball games allow. So, I mean, obviously with blackouts and that kind of stuff, baseball is a really regional game. So you generally only have the opportunity to follow the teams that are around you. Baseball games specifically broaden those horizons so you can fall in love with players that are not in your region. So if you play a franchise, say I'm here in Montana and I play a franchise with, I don't know, the Phillies, and Bryce Harper kills it for me on my franchise, I'm going to fall in love with Bryce Harper, and it's just going to become a natural fandom. It's people underestimate how massive NBA 2K and Madden have an impact on fan bases. The reason that the NFL's fan base is so young, the reason that the NBA's fan base is so young, is because you have people growing up playing these massive sports franchise video games and falling in love with the sport. And there's no reason that baseball can't be the same. But for the last 15 years, you've had really limited options, right? So like, MLB 2K went out of business in, 2013. MVP baseball hasn't been around for Major League Baseball since 2005. Like, it's been MLB The Show or bust, and having that only on PlayStation for so long has really set baseball back, picking up those young fan bases.
Do you guys remember? I mean, we're talking right now. I mean, I think if you looked at, all the video game franchises, the sports franchises, you got 2K. We'll just take 2K, we'll take Madden, and we'll take MLB The Show, right? And we'll throw RBI in there just for the hell of it. You take all those franchises, and how long ago was it that 2K and NBA Live at the time, I think it was NBA Live and 2K were the two big basketball franchises. They probably would have been the third or fourth, franchise if you went, rank them by popularity. How long? 15 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Now I think 2K would blow everything out of the water. Right? I mean, it's because, I mean, their popularity got stronger as the game got stronger, I think, and I think the 2K became such a force with basketball and football, at the same time. And then they kind of, obviously lost the football license and they kind of branched out into basketball. And, but as they built a stronger game, they grew more and more people to that game, to play the video game, which brought more and more people to the real game. I mean, like Nutty said, I mean, it's
celebrities and athletes playing those games as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Absolutely. As far as marketing, but even just as on account of accessibility. I mean, I'm 5 feet tall and I have feet that work most of the time. Like, I'm never going to be a major league catcher, no matter how hard I try. But I can pretend to be one in the show. Yeah. I can design one that looks just like me and rake. Yeah. And it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we talked about it in growing up. I remember we had games, backyard baseball. We had Little League World Series. We had multiple baseball titles, and we spoke of it. Corporate greed has whittled those options down to very few. I just am about finished doing the RBI Baseball review. And while a lot of people have issues with the flaws of that game, the one thing it does is it brings franchise and accessibility to people of all ages and skills. And you can tailor the game to how you want it to play. Is it a simulation baseball game? No, it's not, but it does bring every Major League Baseball park. It brings a full set of rosters of stars that we love, and allows them to play year after year if that's something they want to do. Home run derby, exhibition, online, and it's a very simple pick up and play. It's no different than what we had, 7, 10, 12, 15 years ago, but We don't have that. So I champion RBI, and I always will, if for nothing else than that reason alone.
No, I totally agree, and we're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about
In
RBI.
the next segment, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to dig deeper into that game and talk a little bit about it since it just released this week. And but I definitely think that you're onto something. I think Logan said it before. When you look at these games that have the popularity like 2K, Madden, and they bring these huge fan bases into the video games. And I mean, Madden, we've talked about Madden on this show before, and we've talked, you can listen to other shows, podcasts, and just go on Twitter or, any kind of social media account and look at the Madden love or hate, as you want to call it.
Right.
But watch my TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just follow Nutsy. But no matter what you want to say about it, it sells a tremendous amount of copies every year.
Oh.
A tremendous amount of people play it. Celebrities play it. The players play it. And the one thing I will say about MLB The Show is I think that over the last few years, they've been picking up steam in that moment, in that momentum, trying to duplicate that to a certain extent. I think, they're getting more players involved. They had a lot of stuff going on last year with the different streams and tournaments and a lot. And I think that's a great way to go, because I think the more you can connect the real players, the more you can connect the real players to the game that you're playing.
Yep.
And then you could also say, you get the
players who are just like me. They also like video games. We all love baseball.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like that. I mean, we've all, last year we all dug in during COVID and we were playing online, tournaments and games with MLB and MILB players. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, it doesn't get much cooler than that. I know our Discord last year we had ton of guys from MLB and MILB in our Discord last year, and they would just go in there and they'd be talking about games and setting games up with different players. And Chris, I mean, as well as I do, how cool is that, and how many players and how many people reached out to us and just were like, this is awesome. I
think we even had Gavin Lux in there at one point.
Oh, yeah,
for a short time. Yeah,
absolutely,
he popped in to say hi to everybody. Like it's definitely cool. People want to connect with that, for sure. It's important, and that's part of the shame of the MILB contraction that happened, just because a lot of people are going to lose that, unfortunately, because they don't, if you don't live near those minor league, stadiums, you don't get to see those players coming up, and you might move to something else. I know, like right by me, I'm fairly close to King County Cougars, who have been a minor league affiliate. I think they were minor league affiliate of the Cubs at one point, the Athletics at one point. And most of my early games were at that stadium, and like 2-3 years go by, and then sure enough, oh wait a second, I saw that guy playing when he was on the Cougars, and it's kind of like it adds that connection a little bit. And unfortunately, they are no longer an affiliated team with anybody. So
it happened the same to my Missoula Osprey, my hometown team, no longer affiliated. You had Carlos Gonzalez, you had Paul Goldschmidt, you had Jazz Chisholm, you had so many big names in Major League Baseball that I got to watch as they came up through my hometown, rookie league team, and now losing that affiliation, it's gone.
So I'll ask, as the pusher of unaffiliated baseball, have either of those teams joined up with, say, the American Association or anything like that?
I believe, I'm not sure which association they belong to, but Rosemont, which is like right next to O'Hare International Airport, there's a team that went in right near there, the Chicago Dogs. They were like an independent league. I'm not 100% sure what league they belong to. Fairly decent sized stadium.
They're part of the American Association. Okay. And
they had a lot of former players actually on there. Yeah. They have a pretty decent team, but
one of the baseball loves of my life, Carlos Zambrano, did a sort of unload in there.
Yep. But I do think the Cougars caught on with that league, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome.
So
yeah,
and that means that be able to watch their games. The American Association and all of the teams affiliated with them have a really great online streaming service. It's like $13 a month or something, and they have all of the teams that are involved in that all stream on that same service. So no matter, which one that you like to be a part of, you don't have to get a different subscription for each one. You can watch, unaffiliated, super fun, independent baseball from all over the country, all in one place.
Right. Now, Alyson, we're going to go on to another segment, but before we let you go, I definitely want to talk to you. You talked about you had built this whole little community of fans of the Chinese Baseball League of Taiwan. How did that start? I mean, did someone contact you, or is that just something you put together and just ran with?
When I started getting into the CPBL, I just, I'm terminally online and I'm on Twitter all the time, and the game streamed on Twitter. So I was there anyway, and people would message me and ask, what time is the game? Where's the lineup? All these other things. Can you help me out on and so I just started a group chat and opened it up to anybody who wanted to talk about it. I had a few people early on who, lived in different places around the world who weren't terribly familiar with baseball. So they didn't even know the rules. And they'd be like, what's going on? What do those dots on the bug mean? And all this. So I started the group chat to talk people through the game and help link people up. And over time, it sort of grew and grew. And, casual people left, and the people who really loved the league sort of stayed on. We're at about 50 full-time members that are in the group chat. And we've got a couple, I don't know, I would say at least a few dozen more who come in and out of the Discord server when we do, live English broadcast. The leagues themselves stopped producing in English this year. So my group chat members, a bunch of them have gotten together, and now they're doing their own English broadcasts so that people who rely on that in order to stay with the league will have something to listen to, even if the teams aren't doing it officially. So we have this sort of like guerrilla broadcast crew, making sure that the league stays accessible to English-speaking viewers.
Okay, that's awesome. And for those of you who are interested, when we put up the promo for the show tomorrow on all of our social media pages, we'll have not only the information on how to follow Alyson on Twitter, but also the information we just spoke about. We'll make sure I grab that from Alyson. We'll put that up there, so if any of you have interest, we'll get the Discord information. And Alyson, right now, if fans wanted to watch that baseball, could you tell them how that's available to them to do so?
Yeah, all of the CPBL teams are streaming their games live with their, normal, regular Mandarin language commentary. They're all on Twitch. Okay. Please hit me up online. My private messages are always open. I'm at Infield Fly Girl right there on the screen. And I will make sure that you get those Twitch links. Perfect.
That's awesome. So we'll definitely do that. We're going to be back in just a little bit. We're going to talk a little RBI baseball, but we wanted to thank again Alyson for coming aboard, sharing her knowledge of not only baseball here locally, but on an international level. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we thank you so much for the time and effort to come on the show with us and let us pick your brain a little bit.
It's been a blast. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
You're very, very welcome. So we'll be back in a bit, and we're going to talk some RBI baseball just in a little bit. All right? Take care. And welcome back to Down in the Dugout for our next segment. We want to talk a little bit about a game that was just released this last week. Not a ton of fanfare, but there was some anticipation. I think a little more anticipation this year, more so than we've had in the past. Based off of some of the trailers, and that's, of course, RBI Baseball 21, released on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and Switch. Don't want to cut out Switch. So Logan will get mad at us if we do. So who here, has everyone had a chance to play RBI?
No.
I haven't, but I've watched a lot of gameplay. Like a lot of the big MLB The Show content creators have put out YouTube videos on it.
Okay.
So I've watched a lot of those.
Okay. Scott,
I got to play.
Scott, I know you.
Yeah, I played it on the PS5, 4, and also on the Xbox Series X. So I was trying to compare the two different versions. But yeah, I got to play a pretty decent amount of time. So
okay, and I know you played last year's version. I know you did.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about it before.
Yep.
Talk to the listeners a little bit about what the differences are. What you like, what you don't like, what's different from this year versus last year.
They cleaned it up a lot. I mean not significantly, but the graphics are definitely cleaned up. Stadiums look great again this year. I thought they did a really nice job last year with the stadiums, and I think they really did, a nice job this year as well. They did some really cool lighting. The lighting's really nice. They have day-night transitions now. You'll see like clouds and all kinds of cool stuff. I like they did add like a player creator, which is a fairly in-depth player creator, I guess you could say. It was a little bit more in-depth than I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a few things that I was like, oh, this is really cool. This would be great in another game. Another game we might play. But yeah, they had some really cool things in there. Like they had secondary positions, and you were able to actually add as many secondary positions as you wanted. I thought that was kind of cool. You're actually able to edit facial hair on existing players and hair on players as well, which is kind of cool. Something different than we see in the other game. So that was kind of neat. The player creator, again, same concept. It was fairly decent. A lot of good ratings. They actually added a lot of sliders this year for gameplay sliders, I noticed. That wasn't in previous versions as far as I can remember. So there was a lot more, you could tweak the amount of curve on a ball and all kinds of cool stuff in there. So that was in depth. For the most part, the menus were very similar to last year. It looked a lot like last year's, from a front end perspective, I guess. But on the field, you could see the new pitching mechanic that they added last year. That was tweaked a little bit more. They added a lot more cameras. There's a lot more camera angles, some custom camera angles this year. So that was a little bit different. I did find a lot of the cameras were a little wonky. Some of the ones you picked, and it was kind of almost unplayable in a regards, or not unplayable, but it made the game play harder with some of those cameras. But overall, I thought it was a pick up and play. Animations were still a little rough around the edges, especially the fielding. I think that's the area that they still need to address. I did see some nice animations that I was kind of surprised that I saw. And I did see a little bit more sim-like. Again, it's a pick up and play RBI baseball experience, which is an arcade game, but there was a little bit more sim-like approaches to the AI in regards to playing against them. I saw them pitching around some players. I saw some walks. That kind of stuff didn't happen last year. I didn't see it anyway. It was just, throw the ball down the center of the plate and you're just hitting it and whatever. So there were a little bit more, anime or AI tweaks, I think, made to the, under the hood. So it played fairly well. I did play it again on the PS5 and I played it on the Xbox Series X. And I thought the X looked a little bit sharper, graphics wise. Just at top, the colors popped a little bit better. But in my personal opinion, was the frame rate was a little bit better on the PS5. Again, nothing groundbreaking or eye popping. It's not like the one I would recommend one version over the other. I just thought that it played smoother on the 5, but it looked a little bit better on the X. So. But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. It's not something that I'll play a ton, but obviously this is the gap of a few weeks before we get MLB The Show, and we do have Out of the Park next week, so that's gonna take up some. Once that comes out, that's gonna take up some serious time. So but it'll get some play here and there, absolutely. And I do think that we talked a little bit about this last week that. For whatever reason, they should have took more advantage of this window that they had, where I think they needed to push the game a little bit harder before release as far as marketing, maybe, more on social media, more to content creators. I think the game is good enough that if they pushed it a little bit harder, I think out there, they could have had a little bit more visibility with it this year that would have, brought a lot more eyes to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Logan, now, you just stated that you haven't played the game yet, but you did watch some people play it, whether it be content creation, streaming, whatever the case may be. So obviously those people who played it and streamed it had opinions. You were able to watch it visually. You know, whether it's not personal experience, but you do have an experience with the game. What are your thoughts? What you've seen so far?
I think it is a step in the right direction. The biggest thing I will say about it is they really need to lean in the arcade gameplay, right? They're never going to be able to corner a market anymore with MLB The Show going, Xbox and PlayStation. They need to really lean in on the game being fun and arcadey. Obviously, you want it to mimic baseball. You want it to know that you're playing baseball, but they really need to really lean in on making the game fluid and arcadey if that's the way they're going to go. There's definitely some wonkiness. There's some still like kind of ball magnetism to gloves, like the ball gets suctioned into gloves on fielding stuff, and there was some wonky kind of just animations on hitting as well. My biggest issue or concern is the menu system looks real rough. Like I was watching people try to set lineups or put new players into the rotation or put new players in the lineup, and that looked to be the most cumbersome process ever. But outside of that, it is still like we said last week when I was on, you're going to enjoy RBI more if you don't go into it with MLB The Show expectations. If you go in with, kind of like backyard baseball, kind of, NBA Jam expectations, you're going to enjoy the game a lot more. And that's what I saw from the content creators that I watched. Virtually all of them were primarily MLB The Show content creators, and you could tell that they were MLB The Show content creators because they just don't understand what RBI is going for.
Right. So I'm doing a review on it right now, and I'm probably 300 words from being done with the review. And believe it or not, there's enough depth in the game for me to grab almost 2,000 words on this review, which is quite extensive. If I did the MLB The Show review, it'd probably be close to about 2,000, 2,500 words. But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm using the White Sox in a franchise, and there is there's something fun about that keeps. It's like a gravitational pull. I want to go back and I want to see what Eloy's doing and what Grindal's doing, and I want to see what Anderson's doing and Moncada. It's fun. So
Bob, you're playing franchise. I haven't dug into the franchise mode. How far into it have you got?
In franchise mode, I'm only about 10 games. I played the Angels, played Seattle, and then I'm back home. I played, was it Toronto? I think Kansas City. Thank you.
And then
what are
Cleveland.
the what do the stats look like? 10 games in. How do the league leaders look? All that kind of stuff.
Well, believe it or not, Mookie after 10 games, that's the last time I really looked at it. Mookie leads the league in home runs with 5. But on my team, Moncada I think has 4. Tim Anderson has 2. Eloy has 2 or 3. The ERAs are pretty good. They're floating between high 3s, low. But I mean, let's be honest. The essence of this game is arcade. It's not simulation. Mm-hmm. All right. Sure. So if we're going to call it that, then we can't ask it to adhere to the rules of simulation and for all the statistics to come out and look simulation. Yeah, we just can't. That's unfair, and it's hypocrisy at its best. Yep. But it does play within the same little world of baseball simulation.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's definitely not a sim,
right?
But like I said with the walks and stuff, it was nice to actually play and say, okay, you might have a game that's going to be 15-12, but you had some walks in there. You know what I mean? You saw some bunts, you saw some walks, you saw some things that it does play arcade baseball, but it plays it the way baseball's supposed to be played, I guess you could say.
I was going to say, one of the creators that I watched actually simmed a couple of seasons in franchise, just simmed all the way through a season. And Mike Trout finished at like 310, 43 home runs.
Yeah.
So that's virtually Mike Trout numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. They definitely did work on the AI. I could tell that from the first game I played with it. It definitely, And it has these wonky animations at times, and we were talking a little bit about some of the graphical glitches with certain players and certain stadiums. I know me and Bob were talking about the Giants. When you're facing the Giants, there's some kind of a graphical glitch with the faces of the players as they're batting. I don't know what it is, but it almost appears as though they
the jaws
have like
protruding.
it's like a weird glitch that and it's I only noticed it with the Giants. I didn't really notice it with any other teams. But overall, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with it. I wasn't sure what to expect because there really hasn't been that much media on it. There's some trailers. They didn't really do many previews. There wasn't like a whole lot of fanfare about it coming out. As a matter of fact, it was so tight-lipped about it that I was even up until this past week, and I was like, "Is it still coming out this week?" Because I was, we weren't really sure if it was
right.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if maybe there was some development issues, maybe it got pushed back or something. But the fact that it's out, like I said, I think the one thing I will say, and they did a really good job of this last year. They put a lot of updates out, as far as gameplay patches. They did a bunch of those throughout the season, and they were really consistent with their roster updates. They did a lot of roster updates, and the rosters look fairly decent. I mean, there's some guys in free agency that have already signed with teams, but they have a ton of players that I wasn't expecting to be in the game that are actually in the game. Like Matt Moore from the Phillies. He's already in there, and in his Phillies gear, and there's a lot of there was a lot of players that you weren't sure were going to be included that are already in there, and each team basically has their 26-man roster, and then they have like a kind of like a group of
reserve list.
Yeah, it's not like minor league players, it's just called a reserve list. And then there's a ton of free agents that actually have a lot of players that should be in organizations, so you can kind of filter around and you can put them on the organization they're supposed to go to and stuff if you really wanted to. And if you really wanted to, you can kind of dig deep into it, and there's a lot of editing you could do as far as gear. You could edit bats and batting gloves and colors and all kinds of stuff. So there's not official licensed gear in there. You're not going to see like Victus bats or Nike cleats, but again, you can match up some colors, do some different things with that. So it's come a long way. If you look at the game 4 or 5 years ago where it was, and to now, I think it's definitely come a long way. There's definitely obviously issues with it, but if you play it for what it is, like Logan said, I think you'll be very happy with it.
And Logan, you make a great point when you talk about it needs to embrace being arcade. You know what game did that wonderfully, at least in my opinion, and that was the old. I'm trying to think of it. The Bigs 2. Bigs 2 is one of my all-time favorite baseball games. Call it whatever you want to. You can preface Bigs with whatever you want. It was a baseball game. And that's what it had arcade elements, obviously. Anyone who's ever played it was loaded with art. But what it also did was faithfully recreate the world of Major League Baseball rosters, stadiums, and gameplay. So, and then it went from there and expanded with arcade elements. So, and they embraced that. They didn't shy away from that. They highlighted that. And I think if RBI moved in that direction, cleaned up some of their animations, added a bit more depth, I really think that they'll find a community that will embrace them on a yearly basis, just like Madden does, just like the show does, just like NBA does, and they'll embrace them for what they are, not for what they're trying to be.
It reminds, like, it's along the same line of the Bigs. MLB Slugfest was another game series that I loved that did the same thing. I mean, realistically, what RBI should do moving forward, they need to be the super mega baseball of MLB games, right? Like super mega is super fun. There's arcade elements, but it plays a pretty good game of simulation baseball underneath it all. And then you have like the over the top stuff going on during the game where, you hit a pitcher and they fall down and like that kind of stuff. And if RBI did that kind of stuff, it'd make the game a lot more enjoyable, in my opinion.
You have to wonder, though, how much Major League Baseball would actually let them do that, though, because, they're like, we can't have fights or bench clearing brawls in the show because of that. Like they're very tight-lipped about keeping that stuff like what you can and can't do in the game. So,
That would be interesting. I mean, I personally don't think they would have an issue with stuff like that, but I could be 100% wrong because you're right. They're extremely, and it's not just Major League Baseball. The NFL is just as finicky, if not more, about what Madden can include in the game and what they can't. And I can't say the same about NBA. I think they're a little more flexible. I just don't have working firsthand knowledge of what 2K allows in that series and how tight they are. But
well, I mean, you see it in the park, right? With
Right.
all the over-the-top animations when people hit jumpers and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you have to think that NBA is pretty open with that.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, and that's why. So, but then, Scott, you talked about it. We have OOTP coming out next week, right? I think if you pre-order it, you get it 2 or 3 days earlier. And if not, and you just buy it, it comes out. What date is that? I can't remember. Is it 23rd? 20? You're on mute.
I think it comes out on Friday the 26th, if I'm not mistaken. But
Right, and if you pre-order, I think you get the last beta on the 23rd. I think that's what I've read. So
yeah, so obviously that we've seen some screens of that and seen some previews, and those guys always do a fantastic job with that game. They really do. They're diehard baseball fans. I got the pleasure of working with those guys for a little bit, and they're just they just put passion into that game, and you can tell that they're baseball fans through and through. So very excited about that. Just want to see what they did with the 3D stadiums. I know they that was one of their big things this year was the 3D stadiums.
Huge upgrade.
That looks great. And they keep adding that, those graphical enhancements every year, which, I mean, that's a huge thing. And I think that visual aspect of it is going to draw more and more players into it, as the years goes on.
Chris, let me ask you this. I know we talked to you about OOTP, I think it was last week or the week before, and while you said you can appreciate what they offer and the depth of realism they bring to the table, it's not really your type of game. You're more of a hands-on experience. What if they were to incorporate a kind of a situation like what RBI does and keep everything else and put RBI's gameplay in there? Would you find yourself drawn to that title more?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that intrigues me the most about Out of the Park is the like I said, the classic aspect of it, going back in time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could figure out a way to do that where you could also play like hands-on with those players, I think that'd be unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
To what level they could ever get to that point, I don't know. It seems like they're heading in the right direction with it, though. I don't know if that's really the interest to them, though, to bring that type of element into the game, though, because it is such a sim heavy, environment. So, but yeah, I would totally be interested in it. I'm not opposed to playing Out of the Park. It's just that it's not a game that grips me for a long enough time frame like the show does. Like the show, I can play from January to December. I mean, I can definitely pick it up and just find something to do with it. Out of the Park is definitely a really fun experience, but I do lose interest in it a little bit just because I find myself missing the hands-on experience that games like the show or RBI will give you.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And Wolverine is a studio we've talked about, development studio. They do a lot of simulation style games, and it almost depends. I love OOTP and I love the games that Wolverine puts out also, but I have to be in the right mind frame. A lot of times I'll want to put a game on one TV and then I'll put that type of game on on my PC on the other TV, and I'll watch the game or listen to it, and I'll just play that because I don't want to be heavily involved in what's going on. But I think to OOTP's credit, they do really allow the gameplay where you can be really hands off, or you can go really depth into each type of detail as far as manage each pitch coming out of the pitcher's hand, how you approach each at bat, whether it's you want to pitch around someone or go directly at them. So I mean, I love that aspect of it, that it really gives you the option of how you want to play it. So
yeah, the nice thing about it is you could pick up and just take the the 95 Pirates against the 2000 Mets or whoever and just play an exhibition game.
Am I wrong, or are they doing some type of app?
They're doing a mobile. They had a mobile. They had a
Okay.
mobile game a few years ago for a few years, and it was relatively pretty good. I mean, it was basic functions of the OOTP game. Nice pick up and play though on the go, and just some basic things. But they had all different kinds of seasons you could add on and buy like season packs and stuff like that. But I guess there is a new app, a new mobile game coming. I don't really know too many details on it yet. We're hoping to get some of the guys on maybe in the next couple of weeks. We could get them on here and do a show around OOTP, and we can find out some more information. I think that's releasing a little bit after the game comes out. I don't think it's releasing next week, but there's just the love of the game. When you're playing that game, you could tell that the people that make it just love baseball, because it's just so in depth. There's so many different things to it, and all the leagues around the world. And I mean, I think did I read something about the KBO leagues license exclusive in that game this year or something like that? Bob, did you see that?
I think that's what I did read. I'm doing a review on that, so I'll be getting a copy here pretty soon. I'll take a look, but I think that's what I did read. So
yeah, KBO's in the game.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So we're definitely looking forward to that. And then Monday, now that's going to be next Thursday. We're going to be talking about that. Because Monday we have, who do we have, Scott?
You can announce this one if you want, but this is a good one for you Chicago fans, right?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hockey fans, but we have Nick Olczyk, who's obviously his dad, Eddie Olczyk, played was as announcer for the the NHL network, and he's been in the business for a long time. I think he was involved EA Sports. He was in the NHL series, I believe, right? Yep. For quite a while. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Nick's going to come on when he's with NBC Sports in Chicago. So he's going to come on and talk, just about some base Chicago sports in general. We'll talk some hockey. He played hockey. So the baseball show is going to go hockey next week. We did some football this week. We're going to go a little hockey next week. But he's obviously a sports fan, and he loves MLB The Show, and he loves some of the stuff that we all talk about and do. So he's going to come on and spend some time with us next week. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun. And we have a lot of cool things planned. We talked a little bit a few weeks back when we had Sterling Sharp on. We talked about the tournament we were planning again this year. We did his Groundouts for Kids tournament last year around the release of MLB The Show. And we're actually having, we said it a few weeks ago, we're going to have the second annual tournament coming up. We're going to do that the week after the show releases. So we're in the process of getting all the details out to everybody with that. And I'm not going to give away any surprises or any of the names, but let me tell you, we've got a nice roster of MLB guys who are going to be participating in this. So we've got some really nice players that are going to help out and play in this tournament with Sterling and try to raise some money for charity. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Very exciting. We're like I said, we're working on that. We're going to get you guys more details on that tournament over the next few weeks, and we're going to have obviously a lot of our Scout Scoops content creators and streamers involved in a lot of aspects of that. That whole tournament, which will take place the weekend. I believe it's going to be the weekend after the 20th of the MLB The Show release. So it's probably going to be somewhere in that 23rd, 24th, 25th range. That's the dates we're looking at for the tournament. And we're going to have some nice brackets. We're going to have some nice graphics coming out. Chris is working on that stuff. And, we have, like I said, we have a lot of players that are going to be in this tournament compared to last year. So going to be a lot of fun. Nutsy's got some big plans for it. He's already, I guess we have the Nutsy and Amir Garrett bracket. Is that all set up, Chris?
Bro, I'll go to task with Amir Garrett. We've had this conversation several times. I'm starting to go at him on Twitter. I'm just gonna poke and prod him until we're gonna
hopefully. And then also don't forget too, if Nutsy loses to Amir Garrett, he's got to get a tattoo of his name.
Yeah, Andy's got to wear. Andy's got to wear a Reds hat all year.
Yep.
God.
On stream. So.
And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Scout Scoops is still doing the Scout Scoops Bracket Challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's starting to gain a little bit of steam. So, but there's still
I gotta get in there.
Actually. The ratios are still pretty good. So it's on our social media pages. What's going on for those of you who haven't heard of it yet? We're doing a bracket challenge. We have it set up to where the first 3 winners are going to have the option of MLB The Show 21, OOTP 22, or RBI Baseball 21, depending on the slot you come in if you win. So, and really, there's no entrance fee. All you have to do is just follow us on Twitter and follow us on Twitch. That's it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we got the bracket challenge. We have the big tournament coming up. Yeah. And again, we're still working out details of the tournament, so we'll get you guys more information as we get closer to that. But again, we're going to have a lot of the MLB The Show community involved. Obviously, a lot of our streamers will be involved in certain aspects. So we're going to have a lot of things coming in the next month or so, especially as we get closer to the release of MLB The Show. We have some cool plans for all of us to get together and do some stuff. So we'll be announcing some more things, getting towards closer as we get closer to April 1st. But yeah, I mean, some great stuff. We have the Pick Your Franchise articles that keep rolling out. Keep looking for those on a daily or semi-daily basis. I think the newest one that just came out today was the Oakland A's Pick Your Franchise, right, Chris? Is that yeah?
That's right. Yes. And I think we got another one supposed to be coming out in a couple days. I think. Yep. Possibly, I think maybe tomorrow.
I mean, has anybody read that Pirates Pick Your Franchise article? I mean,
nobody cares. They said whoever wrote it wasn't very good.
Well, it was the Pirates and it was the Cubs. I mean, I think it was written really well. I mean, they're all written really well. But
they said there was like a lot of typos. It looked like somebody just like face planted on the keyboard.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, they said. It was somebody who just obviously was a Pirates fan from years back because he had Doug Dre back in the rotation and all kinds of crazy stuff. So lots of Jason Bates.
Yeah.
But there's also a great article on the Scout Scoops website. If you guys get a chance to check it out, it's on the Stadium Creator, and Rick Underwood, who does some articles for us, he wrote a nice article that was put up yesterday around the Stadium Creator. So that was really, really a nice piece. But yeah, keep checking out the website. Support us, there as much as you can on social media. And, we obviously, like we say every week, we appreciate you guys supporting us with all you do and listening to the podcast and watching these shows. I think that these live shows give us a way to connect a little bit more. We can interact with you guys with the chat, the live chat. Plus it gives us the ability to do things as they roll out. Like we just got to see the stream tonight, so we were able to give instant reaction to it instead of putting out a podcast which might come out in 24 or 48 hours and nobody's going to really care about our opinion by it, in that time after everybody else has already talked about it. So I think the live streams just add a lot more to it. And we're going to keep rolling with the format of having a guest on our early show in the week, and then later on, the second show we were going to do, reaction to the live streams as long as Sony's doing them. And then once the game rolls out, we're going to have a whole new schedule of different things that we're going to be planning. We're going to have content creators using the Scout Scoops channel for franchise streaming. Chris is going to take the channel and he's going to be running with some stuff on there and, all kinds of stuff that he's going to be doing with MLB The Show. And I'll take it, and we'll be doing some franchise play myself. Bob's going to be doing some different things with the Cubs. I mean, I know nobody's going to really want to watch that, but
that's odd. Go look at the read count on the Cubs franchise.
Actually, you're right. Yeah, I think that is like the number one article. Isn't it? Like the Cubs.
Almost 400 views now.
Bob's got some bots going in there, just
he's
refreshing the page every 5 seconds.
No doubt about it. He sent out like a mass email. Please read this.
Please
read this article.
So I can get a paycheck. Nope, that's. All right, well, that's good stuff. Yep.
Yeah, some awesome stuff.
Yep, a lot of fun tonight. As Scott just said, we appreciate everybody takes time to listen to our show, whether it be podcasts, YouTube, or obviously here live on Twitter. So with that, I believe, gentlemen, it's time to wrap it up. Again, thank you to everybody, and everybody have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, guys.